There's a question burning on the lips of every single Victorian. And that question is, why is Australia, once the most formidable state and the world's most livable city, no longer hold that prestigious mantle? Could it be because Victoria has become riddled with corruption? The answer lies no further than Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews and his government. It is the inherent level of corruption within the upper echelons of Victoria that seems to dog the state. And a recent secret grilling by Victoria's anti-corruption watchdog IBAC of Andrews found Labor's culture as rotten and seriously misusing public resources. IBAC's draft findings are a damning indictment of the party, both state and federally, especially with key federal Labor MPs and shadow ministers, central figures in the factions IBAC has identified as unethical. Seemingly, IBAC's interim findings reveal Labor as a party rotten to the core, riddled with men and women determined to abuse public resources for self-interest. Now, IBAC's interim findings are that clear. Labor is a party imbued with systematic cultural failings of abuse encouraged by party leaders for many years. The unethical cultures exposed by IBAC's Operation Watts are not confined to one single faction. These practices are embedded within all branches and are systematic to all factions. Operation Watts found a political culture condoned or even actively encouraged by senior figures of ends justifying means and of not only bending, but of breaking rules. IBAC also found that despite the so-called red shirt scandal exposing similar rorting in the state ALP and promoting legislative reforms in 2018, that poor behaviour continued within the party unabated. Andrews presides over one of the most corrupt governments in Victoria's history. Branch stacking, red shirts, hotel quarantine contracts, the iCook food scandal, the Western Roads upgrade project, the collapse of ProBuild, and a litany of other scandals continue to paint a picture of a rotten premier and government. iCook Foods remains one of the most, if not the most disturbing scandals in Victoria. And Dan Andrews, and who could be Australia's next Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, have a lot to answer to. It unearths levels of criminality and behaviour by government that should concern all Australians, regardless of your partisan political allegiance. How the Andrews government was determined to ruin Ian Cook and his family business, iCook Foods, along with the lives of its employees and associated businesses, all because Andrews and Albanese wanted to establish a catering company that not only ran in competition to iCook Foods, but would also be used as a front to direct funds to the Labor Party coffers. The iCook Food saga remains a battleground of destruction. And since the saga first broke 3 years ago, disturbing allegations of inappropriate behaviour continue to arise about the conduct of various government, council and police personnel. This week, further evidence surfaced from a senior source within the Department of Health and Human Services about the heavy-handed tactics that the DHS have used to silence the original auditor who conducted the audit into iCook Foods. DHS actually threatened to deregister the auditor if he did not collate all of the documents of the original audit and pass them on to the department. It seems DHS are hell-bent on mopping up any evidence that may point to the corrupt behaviour of the department and some of its senior ranking officials. Now, Anthony Albanese wants to be Prime Minister, but his recent visit to Victoria saw a glaring absence of Dan Andrews, who should have been present by his side, but he wasn't. Obviously, Albanese recognises there's a serious stench emanating from Andrews, and the saying, "You sleep with dogs and you wake up with fleas," is an adage that clearly applies in this case. Albanese's advisors recognise it, but there's a problem for Albo. The iCook food scandal ties him closely to Andrews. He was part of the brains trust behind the establishment of Community Chef and the purpose behind its intention. Now, Albo can't just walk away without bearing some of the fallout that is sure to come Labor's way when a true and proper investigation is held into iCook Foods. So far, the investigations and inquiries have been a joke. Now, the problem is IBAC doesn't have the power to lay charges. It can only make recommendations. That is up to VicPol to follow through and pursue those charges that would be recommended. However, the question becomes, do we have enough confidence in Victoria Police to follow through on laying charges and help clean up Victoria and the corruption that exists within our political class? I don't know.